So welcome to a very special episode of the Anime Match Cut podcast. In today's episode, we're going to be reviewing the Netflix series, Dahmer, that has been out on Netflix for quite a bit. The Netflix series Dahmer was created by Ryan Murphy and Ian Brennan, who some of you might know as the creators of American Horror Story. It also stars Evan Peters as Dahmer himself, along with Richard Jenkins, Molly Ringwald, and Niecy Nash in supporting roles. But unlike the usual episodes, I'm joined today by a special guest. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Jasmine. I'm Jack's little sister. I don't know why I wanted to say little brother.
Bruh.
So, yeah, I'm Jack's little sister, Jasmine, also known as Pickled Fetus.
On the Clock app.
On the Clock app.
Okay, so just to reiterate, we're going to be talking about the series Dahmer on Netflix, and I do have to bring up one thing about the title of the of the show. The show officially is called Dahmer Monster: The Jeffrey Dahmer Story.
That's a confusing name.
I know.
Imagine people like looking it up and they're like, "Be for real."
Back in the day, in the 90s, when this story actually happened, it would have just been called the Jeffrey Dahmer Story, because it seems like back in the day, that's just how you would title like a project like this, the Jeffrey Dahmer Story. Let's just give our initial thoughts on the show. Personally, I really enjoyed the show. I was pleasantly surprised. I thought that the acting was really good, and I thought Evan Peters was surprising in this role. I've never seen him act this way in anything that I've seen him. Now, granted, I've only really seen him in the X-Men movies playing Quicksilver, but it was so interesting to see him play like a very unremorseful psychopathic killer. I do have some problems with the pacing and some of the writing of the show, which, prevents me from giving it like a perfect 10 out of 10 or like 100% or however you want to grade it. But I still really love it. I would say I would probably give it somewhere closer to like a 7 out of 10, which is still a good score in my opinion. What about you, Jasmine? How did you feel about Dahmer?
So I personally give it an 8 out of 10. And I think I'm obviously a little biased because I love Evan Peters. And I think that I loved his acting in this one. I think it was
really good.
Yeah, it was different from like American Horror Story, like it from the first season, which what I'm comparing it to. Because in American Horror Story, he was actually like kind of like sentimental towards the girl that he loved, but he was still like a psycho and like, you know what I mean? Yeah. But he had feelings. And in this one, I think he was very like psychopathic, like didn't care about anything, like, you know what I mean? Like very narcissistic.
Yeah, the show makes it very clear that you're not supposed to relate or that you're not supposed to relate or sympathize with him in any way. And I think that was a smart move on the creators and the writers, because you don't want to be sympathizing with a murderer, real life murderer.
Yeah, I agree. Even if it's like, I don't know. I do think that still a lot of people idolize him, and it's pretty fucked up.
Yeah. I mean, that's just kind of like the thing with like the internet. Especially like nowadays, people are so into true crime, but that's been something that's actually been pretty like that's a genre and a subject matter that's been very popular, I would say, for quite a bit, because in the 90s there was a lot of shows on television such as Unsolved Mysteries and America's Most Wanted that focused a lot on real life crime, and people just ate that shit up. But nowadays it just seems it seems very weird. It almost seems like people who are into this kind of stuff, they idolize the killers and the people, and mostly the killers. They idolize them the same way that they would idolize, say, like a singer or like their favorite actor. And it's odd. It's weird that they would be so into these people.
Yeah, it's pretty weird how normalized watching true crime and like studying stuff like this. Because I remember when I was little, our mom, like she liked watching all these true crime cases and like stuff like that. So it's always like really piqued my interest from a young age. And I don't think you should be showing your kids that. And I'm not shitting on how I was parented, but I do think that if you want to show your kids something, don't show them this. Or Coco Melon, because I don't recommend Coco Melon.
Yeah, Coco Melon fucking sucks.
I think that it's scary because growing up, it scares you even more. Yeah. And like now I don't really mind it. I think that really like ruined everything because I'm not scared of stuff like this. And I mean, I've been really into like the whole Jeffrey Dahmer case since probably like sophomore year of high school. So I think this is why I was very interested in this show.
You definitely bring up an interesting point about exposing your kids to like subject matter like this. I do remember being younger. I was interested in these types of shows. I remember on Discovery Channel there was an interesting show called the FBI Files, where they would reenact and just like reenact cases that the FBI investigated and that they solved, and they would go beat by beat how the FBI was able to solve. And I found that as a very educational experience because I got to learn how, police agents and detectives, like how they work to solve crimes. And so it wasn't really scary to me. But also at the same time, when I was young, when I was 6, 9/11 happened. And throughout that time, there was just like a lot of news about war, going to war, terrorist attacks. And those kinds of like real life events really scared the crap out of me because I really was convinced, 6-year-old me was very convinced that, the United States was going to go to war and we were all going to die.
Yeah.
So real life. So these kind of like real life stories can be very traumatizing to young kids who don't understand exactly what's going on with the things happening. But let's get back to the show Dahmer. Again, like I really enjoyed the show because true crime is so popular right now. It's so tempting for movie studios and for Hollywood to capitalize on these famous cases to the point where they would not put any effort into how they would make or write the show. One thing that I really appreciated about the show was the presentation in terms of like stuff like cinematography, editing, music choices, and even set design and the colors that they would choose for a certain scene. One thing that I really appreciated and one thing that really, got to me was the set design of like Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment. A lot of greens and a lot of yellows. Oftentimes yellow is used to convey a sort of like, sickness or like decay. Green is also meant to, in movies and TV, it's meant to symbolize like sinister or evil intent, or just evil or malevolence in general. And there's like a lot of scenes in this show that really creeped me out. Not scared me, but creeped me out. I really had to like turn my head away from a lot of scenes. How did you feel? Do you feel like this show was effective in how they portrayed like all of his crimes and all of his, just like what he did?
So at first I was really like, I want more gore because that's kind of like the stuff that I'm into now. But watching it like a second time around, I think that, and also hearing other people's opinions on it, I think it really like made me look at it in a different perspective because it was respectful of like the victims. And I think that's very important when you're making something like this, to respect, the families of the victims and the victims themselves. So I think that they did it in a way where it's like, what is going on and you don't really have to like go to Google or, ask around, like, what did Jeffrey Dahmer do, So you understand what's going on, but they're not showing it in a way where it's like gonna make you throw up. And like, I think they did a good job with how they made everything like seem and how it made it look. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the show does seem very thorough. I know, like, watching the show, I felt like I was getting, maybe if not the full story, but I was getting like a good chunk of the story because not only does this show feature the crimes and the victims of Jeffrey Dahmer, it also dives into his past, like his childhood, his high school, his time in high school and time in the military, and then just like what led up to him being a killer. And I really appreciate that because I felt that the directors and the writers were using their time, like the time in the episodes, effectively, because it really shows what led to Jeffrey Dahmer being this murderer. And so how do you feel, or what is your opinion on how the show told the story? Because oftentimes in movies, they have to cut a lot of things out, but because this is a mini series, they have 10 full episodes to tell their story. What's your opinion on how the story was told in that way?
So I think the episodes was a good choice because you got to see a lot of it, like a lot of the story, and they put in like a bunch of stuff that I didn't even know that happened. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I was like, I've been kind of into this story for a while now. So I think that they really did like good with the research and like stuff like that. Like they really I don't know how to explain it. They just like they put in things that you wouldn't think is so important, but it just like went so well with the storyline and everything. So I think just overall good.
Just the attention to detail that they put in. You mentioned how you learn some things about the case, and I really appreciate that when, like, say, like a true crime documentary show or movie. If I'm watching it and if I'm familiar with the case, and if I learn something new, that's like points in my book. Because one thing that I do hate about how true crime is so popular is that everybody needs to make a podcast episode. Everybody needs to make a show or a movie about it. And then because certain stories are just told over and over and over again, you never feel that that you don't feel like you're not getting something new out of this experience. Mm-hmm. And even though I'm not a Jeffrey Dahmer expert or anything like that, I've never really been into his story. I do feel that I felt that I understood his background a little bit more, like especially like the things with his dad, the way, like those scenes with his dad and how the relationship of his dad went. I never really considered how his life and his crimes were really affecting the people around him, and also how the people around him were affecting him. So let's get into like the actors. So we mentioned Evan Peters earlier. I mentioned that I really liked his performance. And one thing that I do have to commend Evan Peters in doing is that, so Jeffrey Dahmer is he's from the Midwest. A lot of the show takes place in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So for those of you who don't know, in the United States, if you live in the Midwest, people in the Midwest have a very specific accent. So they sound like, "Oh yeah, don't you know, darn tootin', let's go ice fishing, yeah." So that kind of, let's go hunt moose, yeah. So that kind of like Midwest accent. And Evan Peters does a really good Midwest accent, but he doesn't do it exaggerated like I did. Like what I just did, that's a fucking cartoon. For him, I feel like he did a very real kind of accent. So I really have to commend him for that. What's your full opinion about like him portraying this role? Him as an actor.
I think he, like you were talking about how the accent, it kind of just seems like he really like put his all into this, and like you can tell, and that for me is like what a good actor is. Mm-hmm. They put in so much effort, but it seems like so seamless when you're watching the the movie or the show. So I think that he did such a good job. And like, for me, Evan Peters is a 10 out of 10. Like, I love him. He is a sexy white man, and that he is who I love. So I think I am pretty biased, but either way, I know some people who don't really like watch Evan Peters, or don't really like, like they're not super fans, and they say that Evan Peters was such like a good actor, and like I wouldn't want him to be replaced with anybody else. I think he was the one for this show.
Yeah, now that you mention it, his performance kind of reminds me of Zendaya's performance in Euphoria. Being that you mentioned that you think that Evan Peters is a very handsome guy. Oftentimes I see like with Hollywood actors, especially like young Hollywood actors who are like, really beautiful, really hot. A lot of them they don't take roles, or they don't act in a like it's a lot of vanity. Like a lot of young actors can seem very vain, so they don't so they choose roles that make them look like cool, or they make them look like, like a badass or something. But I like it when an obviously attractive actor, like say Zendaya or Evan Peters, they're willing to go places to really prove like their range as an actor. Because if any of you guys seen Euphoria, Zendaya, a lot of the times she doesn't have makeup. Her hair's a mess. Oftentimes in close-up, she's like covered in sweat and grime. And so I commend her, because she is a very beautiful girl. But she acts her ass off in that show. And I think Evan Peters, like, I'm so glad that he doesn't have such an ego about himself, that he's able to go like to these very dark places that the show went. Because in this show, like, I mean, my God, he's a cannibal. He roofies and drugs people. He constantly like gaslights and lies to his dad and grandma. Oh my
and
God.
The police.
And the police. It's like, like that's a very unlikable character. So I'm glad that, someone of his like appearance, is willing to like take chances in his career. So we love Evan Peters. So what did you think about the other actors? One of the actors who I really enjoyed was the actor who played his dad. The actor who played his dad is Richard Jenkins. He, for some of you might know him from the Will Ferrell movie Step Brothers, where he also plays like a frustrated dad who has a no good son. But in that one, he has to deal with like John C. Reilly just being a fucking man-child. Here, he has to deal with a literal psychopath.
Yeah.
What did you think about the dad character, or the actor, like the character and the actor who played him?
Character, I hated. He's not a very likable character.
Very few characters are likable.
I think that he, just like Jeffrey Dahmer, was one of those characters you can't relate to, you don't want to relate to, But I think him as an actor, amazing. I think he really like portrayed a stressed out dad. Yeah. Like beautifully. I think he did that. He really
he was very convincing.
Yeah. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. Yeah. And I think he did a pretty good job being Jeffrey Dahmer's dad. Like I said, for Evan Peters, I don't think that anyone could like do it how he did it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that actor, Richard Jenkins, he's very good. He's just one of those actors who probably isn't like, you probably don't know him by name, but whenever he appears in a movie, I always feel like he does a good job. Recently, he was in the Oscar-winning movie The Shape of Water, and he was also great in that. But we mentioned how like his dad is also unlikable. Like in the show, one thing that I do like about his character is that, because they don't make him into like the hero. They also show that he's also a very flawed person. Even though he wasn't a murderer, in many ways, he failed his son. Like at one point in the story, he abandons his son. He keeps like sweeping his son's problems under the rug. He doesn't address like his son's like mental health, or like or just like he can't have like a real conversation with his son. And he tries to like, he almost gaslights his son, saying like, oh, you don't have any problems. You just need to act like a man and grow up.
But also, you forgot to mention that he was the person to show Jeffrey Dahmer how to keep his victims.
Yeah, the taxidermy and the dissecting stuff.
Yeah, since he was like into that too, he showed his son. And I'm not saying it's his fault, but I'm saying like maybe don't show your kids something like that.
Yeah, like it makes me wonder how like these types of people, like these like killers and criminals, you know, it's like you just never know. You never know like what the things that like the things that kids are exposed to, you never know how that's going to affect them. Recently, right now, as of recording today, there is another case in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, about a man who last year ran over 60 people at a parade, a Christmas parade, and now we know that he killed at least 7 of those people, and that the other 60 were injured. And in the trial, he's representing himself, but he comes off as such a psychopath and a narcissist. You really must think, you know, what led to this man being the way that he is. And the show Jeffrey Dahmer, you know, kind of illuminates, you know, just like the paths people take to end up where they end up. So let's focus on another. I think the kind of like the last like big minor character. There's also a character called Glenda Campbell, who is an amalgamation of many people who knew Jeffrey Dahmer during his time living in Milwaukee. The character is played by an actress named Niecy Nash, who is known for being in the comedy in the comedy show Reno 911. Niecy Nash plays a character who's an amalgamation of neighbors and witnesses who witnessed Jeffrey Dahmer like basically at his peak. What did you think of like the writers just basically creating a character who is basically like supposed to represent like at least like, I don't know, 5 to 6 other people?
I think it was smart of them to do something like that, because I think it made the storyline a lot more clear and a lot like easier to understand. Yeah. Because going back and like, imagine it would be like all the witnesses, it would be like going back and forth. And I think that the show was already going pretty back and forth with his like whole life. So I think that it was a good choice to do something like that. And Glenda is actually a real person, and a lot of people don't know that she wasn't actually his next door neighbor. She was actually living in another building next to Jeffrey Dahmer. Yeah. If I'm not wrong, actually. I read something about her being not next door neighbors, but almost next door neighbor, like in a building over. So I think it was pretty interesting.
But in the show, she's portrayed as like being his next door neighbor. And because she's the next door neighbor, she has like all these interactions with Jeffrey Dahmer. And so like she's introduced in episode 1. And episode 1, actually, when she came out, I was like really surprised, because I was like, Niecy Nash, the comedian? and throughout the show, and I do have to mention something about the actress. Throughout the whole show, she's not really given any comedic like scenes or lines of dialogue. Her performance is all drama, and I think she does a really good job playing this kind of like sympathetic, even if she's not portraying like the person, how the person actually is. She's playing a type of character that helps inform the audience. And also like she helps represent sort of like an outsider's perspective on the Jeffrey Dahmer like situation, because it's one thing to only focus on Jeffrey Dahmer, but it's more interesting when you get to see another person's perspective, like looking from the outside, like you really see like the damage he caused.
Yeah, I think that her character was like one of the characters who really like pulled at my heartstrings when she was like in the scene where she was saying I called you guys so many times, like when Jeffrey Dahmer was getting arrested. I really like, I felt her emotion, and I, even in her face, you can see like, she's such a good actor. And I personally never seen her in anything else, but when you told me she was a comedian, it really like, surprised me, because I would think that she was more of like
a dramatic actress.
Soap opera actress. She's the type to be in a novela, you know,
or like something like serious, like a Law and Order or something like that.
I would think that too.
I think her career is probably like, I'm not too familiar with the other stuff that she's been in, because she's mostly known for comedy, but I can definitely see her being in other dramatic roles. And, you know, because this is a television show, like, I wouldn't be surprised if she got nominated for like an Emmy or something. She was really good. And I can see why the directors created a character like that. Because she says the things, her character is meant to like say the things that people who were like critics of the police, like she's the mouthpiece for the people who were criticizing the police at that time, because they let Jeffrey Dahmer just basically, you know, what am I trying to say? Like,
wreak havoc.
Yeah, wreak havoc. Damn, yeah. No, but she's really good. So let's sort of talk about like just some key moments in the show that really stood out to us. One thing that really stood out to me in early on in the show is how in the first episode we see Jeffrey Dahmer actually get caught. So the show starts off with Jeffrey Dahmer, like, we see like him with his like quote unquote last victim. And because his last victim escaped, he was able to be arrested by the police, because he was able to tell the police that he was trying to kill him. But then soon after that, we sort of jump into to his early childhood, and then, you know, teenage years, and then so on and so forth. What did you feel about the way that the show started?
So I think it was pretty interesting how it started, because I didn't expect him to get caught so fast. And my initial thought was, oh, this is gonna be like super short. Like they already told like what needed to be told. Yeah. Or it like what everyone was waiting for already happened. Like, so I was thinking of not watching the show after that, because I also I was thinking it was gonna be a lot of like repetitive stuff, things that I already knew. And I think that the first episode really just like hooks you in. So I think that was one of like the most interesting parts for me, was that they showed him getting caught so quickly. Yeah. But it hooks you in. Yeah. And it made them they after that, I think that it just like went pretty smooth after that. Like they didn't miss anything for me, which is what I liked about it.
I was also kind of worried because they arrested him so quickly. I thought that they were gonna go the route of do you remember that Zac Efron movie where he played Ted Bundy? I forget the title of the name of the movie, but there was a movie a few years ago where Zac Efron plays Ted Bundy. But the thing about that movie is that they never showed any of his crimes. They only showed his trials and whenever he was caught by police, but they never showed like him committing any of his crimes, which a lot of people felt that was a letdown, because people wanted to see those crimes and how he committed them portrayed on film. But unfortunately, they decided not to do that, and I found that film very boring. But this film, this show, I think it was a good idea to hook the audience in with Jeffrey Dahmer already being, because he's already the murderer that we know. And we see his neighbor also confront him about the smell. So anybody who knows the Jeffrey Dahmer case, you know that he kept body parts of his victims in his apartment. And because these are human body parts that are decaying and decomposing, they're going to create a very nasty smell. Um,
Yeah. Also, he would like he had like acid in there to decompose them faster because he was like obsessed with bones.
Oh.
Yeah. But I completely just blanked. Hold on, give me a second. I just blanked. Where?
Don't worry, we'll edit this out.
Okay. What were we talking about?
We were talking about how he kept body parts in his apartment, and you mentioned he had acid to decompose basically like melt off the flesh.
Yeah. Oh, but not only did he have body parts in his apartment, he also no, he didn't carry around. He had a head and a penis
What the fuck?
Inside of his work locker when he was working.
That is crazy to me. How did they not catch him?
Yeah, and to think that like if somebody were to look into him just a little more, he could have been caught, because I think that he was a very sloppy killer.
Yes.
Just like Ted Bundy, another sloppy killer. But they got away with it because guess what they are? White men in America.
Yeah, it's that white privilege. Yeah, you do bring up a good point. This show actually does make it a point to show the audience how racism and prejudice really helped him like continue wreaking havoc in Milwaukee, because the police were just not concerned in investigating crimes committed on minority citizens. And so Jeffrey Dahmer would mostly target African Americans, and some of his victims were also Asian American. And I believe, wasn't one of them like Hispanic or Latino?
I think his first victim, since it was like an accident type thing, he was white, and then mostly black. He killed the Asian, and then that sounded really bad. He killed an Asian person. And then I think he did kill a Hispanic person.
Yeah.
But I'm honestly not too sure about like ethnicity wise.
Yeah. But like the point I'm trying to make is that most of his victims to a certain point were mostly minority people. And but because these people were in minority groups, and because it was in the 80s and the 90s, so people weren't as aware or woke, if I were to use that term, to the plight of people living in these in these communities. Also, you mentioned that he is a sloppy killer. One thing that I did like about the show is that they portrayed him. They don't portray him as like an evil like genius or an evil mastermind. They really do portray him as like a fuck up, like a guy who just like can't like get his shit together. Like one part of the show that I really found fascinating was when he learns how to roofie people and how he uses that to commit his crimes. He ends up going to the military, and in the military he becomes a medic. And because he's a medic, he just learns like all this information about medicines and prescriptions and stuff. And he uses his knowledge of these chemicals to later to commit crimes on his victims, because he ends up like sexually assaulting a lot of men. But there's a very like almost kind of funny scene in one episode where he's with like a really hot model type guy, and they're at a hotel, and Jeffrey Dahmer, being a dumbass, roofies himself. He drinks the wrong drink. He drinks the drink that he was supposed to give to the model guy who he was gonna assault. And I just found it very funny, and I also really liked how Evan Peters acted in that scene, because like it was very convincing how he felt like how he acted intoxicated. Yeah, but that was a very funny scene.
Actually, fun fact about that scene: the guy who was there when he roofied himself actually robbed him.
Holy shit!
And he robbed him of like $300, like a watch and like a few little things. Nothing super major, but
yeah, because who's gonna carry like that kind of stuff on?
Yeah, and Jeffrey Dahmer actually didn't report it to police because he knew that the guy ended up catching on. So if he would have reported it, then he would have basically exposed himself for trying to roofie somebody, and he knew what the outcome was going to be. And like we were saying, he was a very sloppy killer. 3 potential victims like slipped through his fingers.
Yeah.
So I think that I also really like that scene because I think it was kind of funny. And when I was watching it, I didn't know that he was robbed. Mm-hmm. I had to do like a little bit of research about that because I think it was very interesting. But also, you were talking about how he was, the racism and all that. And aside from that, like just the homophobia.
Yes.
That, because you see in a lot of scenes where he's like, oh, me and my boyfriend, we're doing gay things. And the cops are like, he's a person of color and he's also gay. Oh, I don't want to mess with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you see it a lot especially in the show. And I really like how they really brought like attention to it because it was such like a thing. And even now, like, obviously a lot of people are more open-minded, but even now there's still a lot of people who think it's gross for people to be gay or be part of the LGBTQ community. And I really like how they brought a lot of attention to the racism and the homophobia. And even Evan Peters in like in some interviews, he said that they did bring a lot of attention to that, and they think that basically what I'm saying is that I like how they shined light on real problems.
It was presented very well in the show, because you could almost tell, almost like through my interpretation when watching those scenes, because there is a scene where he gets caught with a young Asian American boy, and the police are interrogating him, and like Jeffrey Dahmer, he knows, oh, I gotta bring up that we're gay because it's gonna make people uncomfortable. And especially like in that time, that crime would have been committed somewhere like within the 80s. I believe, don't quote me because I don't know exactly, but during the 80s, there was the AIDS epidemic. And the most people who received like the most criticism and scrutiny was the gay community. So a lot of people were very afraid of gay people because people knew that AIDS could be transmitted sexually, but also like through blood. So, so people were just very cautious about who they were around, and they were just like scared. They were scared that they were going to catch, something, even though like nowadays we're more enlightened to like how diseases work and how to protect yourself. A lot of gay people back then, they were they had targets on their backs, and people avoided them like the plague.
It was the 80s COVID-19.
Exactly. That was AIDS was the COVID of the 80s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember learning about the 80s AIDS thing in freshman year in health, which was honestly, it was pretty surprising to me because a lot of people, like, we all guessed, because our teacher made us guess, like, who do you think was affected most by this? We all just said women and straight people, and nobody really thought like, oh, gay people. But then it was brought to my attention that like when you're gay, you don't really use a condom because pregnancy isn't really like a fear of them. And like, I think now that I think because that happened, a lot of people are way more cautious on stuff like that.
Just like education is more prevalent. But although you do bring up that you learned about that in school, I remember like I learned about like AIDS and stuff like on my own. Like I just came across it like on the internet or something. Like in school, they didn't really mention that. So that's kind of weird.
I think now it's like being taught because of how much sex is so like, like a lot of people that I've known, and I'm a Gen Zer. Surprise, surprise. A lot of people that I know have been having intercourse since probably like sixth, seventh grade.
Damn.
There was a lot of girls who I knew who were on birth control since
Shit.
seventh grade. Yeah. So it's pretty crazy. Now it's
Yeah.
like, y'all like to fuck.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. No, it's just so crazy. How like you learn about these things. But yeah, you know, Jeffrey Dahmer, he really used that to his advantage. Another part of the show that I really enjoyed was how they portrayed his childhood, because we really see like the turmoil and just like the trauma. I guess you could call it the trauma that he went through, because his parents are their marriage is portrayed as not a good marriage. Because because his dad had a lot of problems with his mom, because he because it's obvious that the mom had like some mental health issues, and because of that, because of the time that they were living in, they didn't really like understand mental health as we do now. That just caused a lot of problems in his parents' marriage, and so you really see how that affected a young Jeffrey Dahmer. But also, what's interesting is how they portray him as a little kid. They portray him as someone who just can't relate or interact or socialize with like his fellow students. Because there's a scene in one of the episodes where he, instead of giving his teacher an apple, he gives her a jar of tadpoles. Tadpoles that he got because I guess he was with his dad out in the woods or something, but he thinks that that's an appropriate gift. But someone who is more socially, who's like more social and can read like social cues, like they would know, yeah, maybe the teacher wouldn't appreciate this. Maybe I should just get her an apple.
Yeah, I think that they did a good job in showing how socially awkward he was. Even as a kid, like he didn't know how to handle situations.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that was the one time that you really like felt bad for Jeffrey Dahmer, because he was already going through such a hard time at home that even at school, they didn't like show that he had friends. They didn't show that, he was a very social person. Even the teacher was weirded out by him. And actually, I read that his first grade teacher, said that there was something off about him, that like there was something that she didn't like about him. And, on his report card, she said that it's so clear he's a child of neglect.
Yeah.
And obviously we know that he was, because his mother was always having like an episode, and his father was like working, and he didn't care much for mental illness, which is like kind of sad, but you can't really blame the people around him for the way he turned out, because obviously you can see that even when he was a kid, there was something wrong with him.
Yeah.
And instead of getting him the help that he needed, they kind of just kept pushing their kid away and made it even worse, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I know.
Because the show does a really good job at making you sympathize with a young, like an underage Jeffrey Dahmer, because like, yeah, he's just a kid. He's awkward. He doesn't really know how to get along with people. But you see what he goes through with his parents, and you see how his parents basically neglect him, and because they're so busy fighting and arguing, that they don't have time to like really like guide him, like, or teach him anything about the world, or how to like interact with people, or how to make friends or anything like that. But the show smartly, once Jeffrey Dahmer starts, becoming an adult, they smartly brain fart. They smartly don't try to make you sympathize with him, because once he starts killing his victims and committing crimes, you never sympathize with him, which is very smart, because if they written it in a way where you sympathize with him, like in any way, like I don't think that would have worked, because you sort of lose like the impact of like the harm that he really caused. And even like when he's like a teenager and he starts to become an alcoholic, I still felt sorry for him. But once he starts like, killing people, like the show, no more sympathy for this guy.
I think for me, when he started, like when he was in his like early teen years, I did feel a little bad for him because I'm pretty sure a lot of people know what it feels like to be an outcast and like, not fit in and stuff, especially in high school. But like when he started like spiraling with like alcoholism and all that, I didn't really feel bad for him.
Yeah.
And it's not that, I don't care for people who are sick like that. I just think that he made his own decisions. He was already like, he knew what he wanted to do and stuff. And actually, he was already plotting his murders since he was 16. And I think,
really?
Yeah. And I think that that's one of the main reasons why I didn't really like sympathize for him when he was, in high school. But I did feel bad for him because he didn't have friends and he had to, basically, ridicule himself for him to make any friends because they didn't show this in this show, but in My Friend Dahmer they showed how he would like do these little like spasms, like basically mocking people with Tourette's. So he would do things like that, and he actually did gain a few friends, and he would always do it, but to the point where his friends were like, we're only friends with this guy for one reason. And it's because he makes us laugh. So I think Jeffrey Dahmer kind of knew, because even people at school stop laughing, and like, it just gets annoying. You can't keep saying a joke and expect people to laugh every single time, So
damn. And even still, like I remember in my school there were kids like that, kids who who didn't have like the right social skills, so they would just like act a certain way because they knew it would get them attention. Like even like kids nowadays still do that. God damn.
Yeah, and it's crazy because you never know. Maybe we've come across a few Jeffrey Dahmers in our time that haven't been brought to light. But I don't know. I think that kids are cruel. I do think kids are cruel.
Extremely.
So I think that just be kind. Be mindful,
Be kind, rewind.
Oh God.
Also one thing interesting that I did not know about Jeffrey Dahmer is that he essentially photobombed yearbook photos. And there's like a funny scene in the show where like the committee, like the people who are like part of whatever school activity, they were pissed that he was able to sneak in. Like and we see throughout the show that he's quite a bit of a prankster, because even when he's in prison, he still does like these type of like annoying things in prison, like these pranks and whatever to grown ass hardcore criminals.
Yeah. A lot of people like they say that Jeffrey Dahmer kept his humor, and I think that that's pretty fucked up, because I don't think that the shit that he did was funny.
It's funny to him.
It's funny to him because he doesn't know how other people think. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he doesn't think like a normal person. So everything he does to him, it's funny. But it's like making your chicken nuggets look like a body part and covering it with ketchup is not something that you should joke about with hardcore killers or people of that nature. And that's what eventually got him killed, which was like, pretty funny. But I don't know.
Before watching the show, I did not know that he was like this type of prankster, because I remember watching like news reports like on YouTube and stuff, and he never portrayed himself in interviews that way. He always portrayed himself as like a very troubled person, but never as someone with like a sixth sense of humor. And so it almost makes me kind of laugh that, if he would have cut that shit out, maybe like kept to himself and maybe not do all that shit, he'd still be in prison, but we would Like he would probably be alive now.
Yeah.
But oh no, but did he get the death penalty?
No, because in
Oh.
Milwaukee it wasn't legal then.
Oh, okay. No. So yeah, so he probably would have still been alive.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe. But what's it called? I find it it's funny because supposedly I think he was in more than one of the pictures of like, because he wanted to show his dad that he was part of things, because his dad was like, you need to make friends, you need to stop being the way you are and stuff like that. But, so I think that he tried so I think he tried to fool his dad into thinking that he was a very social person now.
Interesting how it's so common with like serial killers and like these hardcore criminals that they have a need to like lie and fabricate things instead of actually like doing like the things that they're trying to set out.
Yeah,
it's interesting. Also, like for me, I felt like that scene, the yearbook scene, to me was like obviously fake. Like to me, it felt like something that was just written for the show to make the show, I don't know, a little bit more interesting or something like that. But I was really surprised that was actually that actually did happen.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's one of the things that a lot of people like know about Jeffrey Dahmer. I think it's kind of like one of the things that you like can't really miss when you're researching him and stuff like that, especially because it's also in the movie My Friend Dahmer. It's like one of the big parts of that movie. So I think that
is that movie good?
I wouldn't say it's good,
because I saw the trailer for that movie and just by watching the trailer I'm like, this looks like a piece of shit. I'm not gonna watch it.
I think it's very repetitive. I knew everything that it wasn't like this show where it's like you learn new things and stuff like that.
And it has a specific ending, because doesn't that movie only cover his high school like
Yeah, I think
days?
well, from what I remember, it covered a lot of his high school days and stuff like that. And it showed how like he learned how to do taxidermy and how like his little spasms showed that. And it showed how he was basically just an outcast. Didn't really show much of like his childhood. I don't think it showed his childhood at all. And I'm pretty sure that it didn't really show like him killing at all, because I don't remember that being part of it. And to me, that's why it was boring. They didn't show anything new that I didn't know already. And I think Ross Lynch did a good job. Like,
oh yeah, the Disney Channel guy.
Yeah, I think he did a good job. But to me, it just wasn't like something enjoyable. I think that this show, Dahmer / Monster or whatever, is a good representation of Jeffrey Dahmer. And I think they did a better job than whoever created that. And I'm not shitting on their project, but I kind of am.
Funny how both Zac Efron and Ross Lynch got famous for being on Disney Channel, but then ended up playing serial killers.
I know, that's kind of funny.
Who are we gonna get to play John Wayne Gacy? We gotta finish the trilogy. Who are we gonna get?
I hope. I don't know, actually.
I want. What are those brothers called? The Sprouse kids?
Zach and Cody.
Yeah, I want either Zach or Cody to either gain a lot of weight, and they should play John Wayne Gacy. And
it's pretty funny because they could use both of them. No, but I don't know why I thought Jake T. Austin. It doesn't really make sense because he doesn't even like look even remotely like him. Well, I don't know what John Wayne Gacy looked like him.
Funny how like there's not a lot of oh, you know who could play? Because I was gonna make the observation that a lot of Disney Channel actors are not, bigger, more rotund, but they could get Gibby.
No, you know who I thought about right now? Shane Dawson.
Oh, Shane Dawson. What the fuck?
An already hated human being could be hated a little more. Somebody look into that. Somebody contact, get Shane Dawson to contact me. I want to work on a project.
No, I think Gibby. Get the actor who played Gibby. He'll play John Wayne Gacy.
I think that's not a bad idea because Gibby.
Gibby.
Back on track because this
Gacy. Just imagine throughout the whole movie, he's like, Gacy. Taking his shirt off.
And you know, another funny thing, they can get young Gibby, which I think is the actor's little brother, and get him to play young John Wayne Gacy.
Yeah. But you were gonna mention something about the show.
I don't even remember.
Gacy.
Oh God. Oh my God, no. On the topic of John Wayne Gacy, I really like how they put him in.
I was surprised when he came up.
Yeah, and not only they put like the baptism and the him being euthanized. Is that what it's called when they inject you?
I guess you could call that, but you could just say like his lethal injection or like his execution.
That when he was executed, and Jeffrey Dahmer being baptized the same day, and then a partial solar eclipse. I think that scene was kind of cool, but I also like how they showed him actually killing. Yeah, which was to me surprising because when you think of a serial killer show or whatever, you don't think like, oh, they're gonna show everyone or they're gonna show another person.
And yeah, so in the show we see John Wayne Gacy at least kill one victim, and he drowns him in, what was it, the toilet or the bathtub?
The bathtub.
Yeah. So to my understanding, that's one of the ways that he would prefer to murder his victims. Was through drowning. Like, he was a real piece of shit.
But I also like how they even, like, the actor was saying, I'm God. What
the fuck?
Yeah, because that's what John Wayne Gacy like actually did. Like he thought he was like almighty, all powerful. And I think that's a thing with a lot of killers. They do this for power.
Yeah, because John Wayne Gacy, his big thing is that his dad never approved of him, and his dad was always ashamed of him, and he insulted him and belittled him and embarrassed him. And so I could understand him like searching for that power. Mm-hmm. God damn, again, he's a piece of shit.
Yeah, it's horrible. But also like a lot of even what's his name? Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah, Dahmer, the guy we're talking about.
Yeah, who we're actually talking about. Jeffrey Dahmer, like he also was belittled and stuff like that, which is like a common occurrence with serial killers. And like I like how they show it a little bit, but it's like we already know why he's doing this. But also like there's a lot of people who get bullied, and it's just like I think that they should really do more like research on stuff like that, on why people end up how they end up, you know. Like it's crazy because there's a lot of people who get bullied but don't have thoughts like this, and there's a lot of people who do and they have these thoughts but they never like actually do it.
Yeah. So
I think somebody do some more research. It's not gonna be me because I'm not that good of a person to help out.
Bitch.
Yeah,
you're not the one.
I'm not the one. No. Girl, be for real.
Yeah, I was also pretty surprised that they also referenced another serial killer who actually came way before like Dahmer and Gacy and Ted Bundy. They referenced Ed Gein, who I believe is like considered like the first modern American serial killer. He was he did his crimes like in the 50s. Yeah, in the 50s. So he was caught in the 50s. And he was also from Wisconsin, funny enough. And so he would like target like women, and like he would also, like Dahmer, like, you know, dissect them and then like use their skin to like make furniture and stuff. Like no joke. He would use their skin to like make like utensils and furniture and all this shit. And funny enough, Ed Gein was also the inspiration for the book/movie Psycho. So if you guys know Psycho, like the famous scene in the shower where like the woman's getting killed, that's inspired by Ed Gein. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is also an inspiration. And one other inspiration, now that I'm thinking of it, is The Silence of the Lambs. Buffalo Bill, the guy who kidnaps young girls and skins them. Yeah, so good little. I enjoyed that little like cameo, even though like it wasn't like, I guess you could call it a cameo.
Yeah, it wasn't as big as John Wayne Gacy's, but I do find it interesting how they found killers who were kind of like connected in a way. So I do like how they did that, because like you can see in a lot of serial killer stuff that they don't really do that often. Mm-hmm. Well, what I've seen, I've never seen something like that.
But I enjoyed that. I enjoy it when like again, like when shows take risks to try something new.
Yeah.
And to like not just be repetitive.
Yeah, and I think that's what they did. They did a lot of that in this show, because if you think about it, maybe like there's a lot of things that like if you would have came out with that a few years ago, mm-hmm. it would be like, I don't like it, you know? But I think now was like a perfect time to make another Jeffrey Dahmer thing. Mm-hmm. Because I think that's why My Friend Dahmer flopped so hard.
Yeah.
Not the time, buddy. Mm-hmm. Not the time.
And also like, and this is also probably like the best thing ever associated with Jeffrey Dahmer. What the fuck am I saying? But like in terms of like a movie or like a piece of media, because Jeffrey Dahmer, like in the 90s, when this story was fresh, they did make a TV movie on the Jeffrey Dahmer case, and that one has been criticized for being very exploitative and salacious. Ted Bundy also got one, and John Wayne Gacy also got one. And those movies were just meant more to like capitalize on the story and just like show like the violence of it all without having any kind of like substance to the stories.
Yeah, I like that you brought this up, because I was gonna say that they weren't disrespectful. Well, what I think, they weren't disrespectful to the victims. I've never like I'm not a family member of the victims, so I wouldn't like, I don't, obviously my opinion doesn't really matter in this, because I don't know somebody who was killed, and I don't feel strongly mm-hmm. towards something like that. But I do think that when you're making something like this, you always have to respect family of the victims, respect the victims themselves. So I think that it wasn't like exploiting them. Mm. And I think they did a good job with not like showing him actually like murdering them. And like, they did show some parts where it's like kind of a little graphic, obviously, when he was obviously there was like blood stains, and like the hitchhiker, they did show how he killed him. Mm-hmm. But I think that was more of like educational than anything else. Yeah. So I do think that they did a good job with that.
Yeah. Because that's the thing, is like the families, they're going to have their own perspective, like their own unique perspective that nobody else is going to have. And so I respect that if they feel that the show maybe is not portraying them, or maybe like, I respect the fact that, if they're not on board with the show, or they don't want to back the show, that's all good. People shouldn't give them shit for that. But I do think that, we shouldn't keep stories like these like away from the public. They shouldn't be swept under the rug, because like I mentioned before, like when I was a kid, or like when I was a teenager, nobody ever mentioned to me about AIDS or like sexually transmitted diseases. So if people are not aware that things like these can happen, that could lead problems down the road. For example, just recently, since we live in California, we recently had a new serial killer emerge within the last couple of months. And this serial killer would mostly in Stockton, California, but it has been confirmed that he would go to other cities in the San Francisco Bay Area, and he would mostly target Hispanic Latino men. And me being a Latino man, I was thankful that the media was letting people know what this killer was doing and who he was targeting and how they were being targeted, because with that information I was able to be extra cautious and and just take steps that I needed to take in order to not be in danger. So yeah, like the family's gonna have like their issues and they're gonna have their trauma, but I also feel that stories like these should be told, but they should also be told responsibly, because again, the show towards the end of the series, the show shows how like people get obsessed with like Jeffrey Dahmer, and like he gets like fans, like fangirls and stuff like that, and like people are creating like comic books about him, and they want to make a movie about him, to sort of like capitalize on the story, like when the story was like freshly done. So you can tell that was like the intent of those people, was to like just cash in on something, or like make light of something. And so the show does a good job of like really, like the show really makes you sympathize with the victims and their families, which is something that you don't really see a lot, because oftentimes movies don't have enough time for you to like even sympathize with like a victim's mom or something.
Yeah.
And that was one thing that we saw in the show.
Yeah, I think going back to the Stockton killer, I'm glad that we have the resources now that like lets us know super fast, like in rapid speed, like what's going on like outside, and like stuff like that. Like we have it at the tip of our fingers with our phones, with our computers, even on the radio, like if you don't use social media, you can hear it on the radio. And it's crazy because I think we are kind of like taking it for granted how easily accessible things like that are for us, because I'm pretty sure that it would take people a while to like figure out like that there's stuff going on, like especially, well, maybe not in like the 90s and like stuff like when it was Jeffrey Dahmer's time, the 80s and 90s, but before, I think that it was probably much worse, and obviously people had to always be on their toes about stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that that's all I had to say.
Yeah, but it's also that you bring up the 90s. The 90s was also a unique time in media where like so channels like CNN and Fox News were like brand new. And so that was the creation of the 24-hour news cycle. So news was always constantly being updated like every hour on the hour. And so news channels and news organizations were always like reporting on just like everything, like anything and everything. And so one of the big things that became very popular in the 90s were like these like crime stories or these scandalous stories. Jeffrey Dahmer, O.J. Simpson, Bill Clinton getting a blowjob in the White House. So it was a unique time in media where like, we didn't have phones. Email was brand new. And the internet was just like so basic. And people would get their news from the television. And so the television, with all of these competitors, they had to like, really capitalize on certain stories. And, when a sicko killer from Wisconsin gets caught, cannibalizing people, like the news, they're going to be all on top of that. So anything else you want to add before we just go to like the final few episodes of the show? Like any fun facts or any trivia?
The mannequin.
Oh, the mannequin.
The mannequin. Let's address the mannequin.
It's the mannequin in the room.
The mannequin in the. I was gonna say the elephant in the room, but it's not really an elephant. It's mannequin. So Jeffrey Dahmer, while he was living with his grandmother, he stole a mannequin, and he would have sex with it. And his grandma eventually found it. And you want to know where it was found? In the closet.
Holy shit.
Crazy. You know why? It's a little funny. I think it's a little jokey joke to make fun of it, because his mannequin was in the closet, and Jeffrey Dahmer was too in the closet, but not physically.
Mm-hmm.
He was metaphorically. So I think it was pretty funny to know that.
But in the show, one thing I do want to add, in the show, they don't really show him doing anything explicit with him. All he does is cuddle with it.
Yeah.
But goddamn.
Yeah,
fuck.
and when I was reading about it, because I found it kind of funny that they did put it in the show. When I was reading about it, it did say that it was like his sex toy.
Oh my god.
So it's pretty funny. Which that's kind of crazy because mannequins are made out of plastic.
Oh my god.
I don't even want to imagine like the pain. But but being the type of person he is, I imagine pain doesn't really bother him.
What the fuck?
So also, I didn't know that Jeffrey Dahmer was a necrophiliac, and they didn't even show this in the show either.
Yeah, not that I recall.
Yeah, they really like emphasized on him eating and like being aroused by the organs, but they never like showed that he would actually like have sex with the bodies. Which was kind of interesting because I didn't even know that he was one.
I would not, if you were to tell me that without seeing the show, I would not be surprised.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised either.
He already is such a fucking weirdo creep.
Yeah. Also, Jeffrey Dahmer would mainly eat hearts, biceps, livers, and the flesh off the legs.
Oh shit!
I already mentioned this kind of, but the head that was in his locker was the head of Anthony Sears. I think.
Who is Anthony Sears?
One of his victims.
Oh.
Yeah, he was the guy who his penis and his head was in his locker. Shit. So yeah. I thought it was interesting. I think that we should know the names of these people. Yeah. Which was and I'm not laughing at the victim. I'm laughing at the situation. I'm more laughing at Jeffrey Dahmer because there's a lot of people who make podcasts and who make videos on YouTube like this who are now getting canceled. And I don't think it's obviously it's cancel culture, but I don't think it's people's fault for being too sensitive. I think that it's more of people disrespecting cases like this. And I think that when you make something like this, you shouldn't be laughing or like making jokes about the victims. Yeah. Make fun of the fucking killer. Yeah. Because what is he gonna do to you? What is he gonna do to you? Yeah. The victims were like, they already went through enough.
Like, they're literally victims. They're victims of a crime.
Yeah, exactly. So make a meme or two about
don't victim blame.
Yeah, make a meme about Jeffrey Dahmer. Yeah. Say that he was a loner freak. Yeah. But talking about memes, what do you think about like all the memes that are going around right now of Jeffrey Dahmer?
I love them. There's a meme on TikTok right now where like people are just like, they're using the audio from the show where he's like saying, I just want to take some pictures. And like there was one I saw where like a mom was trying to take pictures of her newborn baby. I don't know. I think it's really funny. Like, people are really creative on these on like social media. So like, but yeah, I do agree with what you say. It's like, you know, make fun of the killer, don't make fun of the victims. Like, I think of like a classic South Park episode where they basically like make fun of Osama bin Laden. And they don't make fun of the victims of 9/11, nor do they make fun of the people who treated 9/11 seriously. They make fun of Osama bin Laden because he's the asshole in the situation. Yeah. But the memes, keep them coming. They're funny.
Am I the asshole for it? Sorry. Yeah. That when anyone says asshole, I think of that. But it's
the Reddit things.
Yeah, the Reddit stories. Yeah. But it's crazy to me how people use these audios and like use clips of the show to basically poke fun at the serial killers.
Mm-hmm.
And so far, I haven't seen anyone make fun of the victims, but I do see a lot of people making fun of Jeffrey Dahmer, and I'm really enjoying it because I also like the audio where they're I just want to take a few pictures, or when he slips in the movie and he's like, I just want to watch. I told you I just want to hang out and watch.
Oh yeah, and, that one's a good one too.
Yeah, and they're not photoshopping, but they're like putting a different clip on the screen, and it's like me when I don't want my friends to leave or something like that. And I think it's pretty funny how this show is like creating a lot of memes, because you wouldn't think like when you're watching the show like, oh, this is such a meme, like I'm gonna make this a meme.
Yeah, because like memes they transform the thing that they take it from. Because you could be a person who's never seen the show and see the meme and like it's a whole different perspective. What was I gonna say? I was gonna say something about that. Keep them coming. The memes are really funny, and it's like you can't prevent people from memeing something, even if it's something serious like that. Yeah, serious like that.
We're in 2020. Everything's a joke to these kids.
Yeah.
So I think if you're gonna make a meme, be mindful, be respectful. Like, but not to Jeffrey Dahmer. Do not respect that motherfucker. And if you idolize him, die.
Yeah.
Sorry.
If you want to avoid controversy, make fun of the criminal. Don't make fun of the victim. Just do what South Park did. They made fun of Osama. They didn't make fun of the victims of 9/11 or 9/11 itself.
I agree. Now we can get into the final episodes of
Dahmer,
of
the monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story.
Okay, I wanted to ask you this question.
Yeah.
What is your favorite title? What would you prefer?
I like titles that are nice and simple. I would really prefer it if it was just called Dahmer, because I think that just says it all. And there's a movie that I like called Zodiac, which is about the Zodiac killer, and it's just called Zodiac. And I think that captures everything.
Yeah, I agree. I think, although I do like Monster, I think it's kind of like funny. It's a little funny.
Because the Jeffrey Dahmer story seems that's too 90s. That's too passe.
I think that I was about to say Bundy. Oh no. Bundy. I think that that Dahmer is actually the perfect, because it's like mysterious.
Yeah.
Like, but you know what you're getting yourself into. I think it's perfect. Okay,
and
now
Monster could be a little bit too vague.
Yeah, it's like they think it's like a scary movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. Now we can get into the final episodes, and we can start.
One thing that I did like about the final 2 episodes of the show is that they really focus on the aftermath of Jeffrey Dahmer's arrest, and they really show like not just like they don't really, because again they focus on the crimes, but those last 2 episodes were really great in my opinion. They really show how Jeffrey Dahmer's crimes affected the families of his victims, how it affected media and popular culture at the time, and it also like opened the window into like seeing like these crazed fans of serial killers and how they interact. And also we saw like the continued like trauma and abuse of some of the victims because they just wouldn't be left alone. And also we saw Jeffrey Dahmer's demise too. And I really liked the show. I mean, I really liked the last 2 episodes, except for one thing. So Jeffrey Dahmer was killed by a fellow inmate, but the actor who portrayed the inmate, I did not like his performance. His performance seemed a bit too fake and a bit too over the top for me. Because I feel like that actor was trying so hard to play like, I'm a criminal and I'm angry. Like he wasn't like he didn't feel sincere. I think that's the best way I can put it. But overall, I like those last 2 episodes. Do you have anything to say about those episodes?
2 things that come to mind when you're talking about how Jeffrey Dahmer was killed. dude thinks he's the main character. That's exactly what I thought when you were talking about that. But also the song that's like going around TikTok right now, it's like Psycho Killer.
Yeah.
But it's I do agree that I didn't like the last part, but also I wasn't too focused on the actor himself, because I was like, finally this motherfucker's gonna die.
Yeah, he's gonna get what he deserves.
Yeah, so I was really looking forward to Jeffrey Dahmer getting killed, because he got what he deserved. But I hate the fact that he went out too easy. And I think that
because he was bludgeoned to death, like he had like his skull like beaten in.
I still don't think it's enough.
Well, compared to what he did to his victims, no.
I think that that although he was killed, he got what he deserved. It wasn't enough. Because
it really makes you think about like the severity of, say, like murders. Because the way that he was murdered out of like rage. But the way that Jeffrey Dahmer murdered his victims was like it was so methodical and so like maybe like I want to say like thought out. Like he put like a lot of thought into like how he was gonna commit these murders and commit these crimes, and how he was gonna basically like take advantage of these people. So in many ways, like you could say like he is much more evil than like the guy who just beat him to death out of like rage and frustration.
Yeah, I obviously it's very clear that he's been wanting to kill for a long time like for a long period of his life, and he was like emotionless, and also like he didn't care. But also, fun fact, Jeffrey Dahmer fell in love with one of his victims, and he how do you say, he
regretted killing his victim.
Yeah, exactly. He regretted killing him because when he realized that when he came to what after like what he did, when he like basically like when it came clear to him what he did, no, that's not how I want to word it. After he killed him, he realized how attached he actually was to this person. And I honestly, when I read about it and stuff like that, I was honestly shocked, because when you think of a serial killer, you don't think like, oh, he'll eventually love, stuff like that. Because also Ted Bundy at the time had a girlfriend.
Yeah.
Which was crazy because...
And John Wayne Gacy was married a couple of times.
Yeah, it's crazy because you see these killers as monsters, but like when you well, they're still monsters, even if they fall in love.
But yeah, because like when you think of like a killer, you really do think of them as a monster, as someone who is inhuman. But when you learn that they had like some like a trait or like an emotion that is very relatable to humans or to like normal everyday people, it almost makes you it's complex. You don't know how to feel because you already created this image of them that they're monsters, they're inhuman, but then you learn that they had good relationships with like, or maybe like, they had a nice relationship with a parent or a nice relationship with like a sibling, but they're killers. It's complex.
Yeah. I think that's why, well, I don't remember if they showed something like about him falling in love with this person, because if they did, I feel like that would have been like, oh, you're sympathizing with him and you feel bad, because he did say that he fell into depression after he killed him, and like he wanted to get rid of his body so fast because he just couldn't like cope with him actually killing him. But it's crazy because Jeffrey Dahmer, what could have been if he didn't kill this person? Like maybe it would have stopped him from killing more people because he felt that way for somebody. But
yeah,
it didn't happen that way. It just kept happening.
You do bring an interesting point of like what could have been, because there's so many stories of like people who commit crimes or people who ruin their lives because of, because of X, Y, and Z. So sometimes you think in hindsight, what could have been if they just, had the help that they needed, or a little bit more forethought into not doing these things, or if they maybe taken a different path. But also it makes me think, you talking about the victim that he loved, like, was the urge to kill like that powerful? Like, did the urge to kill have such a hold on him that he was able to like not think about love or lust or anything like that? Like, the urge to kill, was it so powerful that it overtook like feelings of love for like another human being, like romantic love for another human being? So that's odd.
Well, I think it was more of like, maybe he wasn't thinking about like him being in love at the time, because I think, well, he said that it was like more of a sexual thing. Yeah. And you can't really mimic that when you're like having sex. You can't like rip out their organs and then just like stitch them back up, because I am kink shaming. I will be kink shaming this episode. I am so sorry well, no, I'm not sorry. If you think organs are sexy and appealing and you just want to jack off, you probably need to get some help. But I think it was more of like him wanting to be sexual with this person, that it was like, it didn't matter that he loved him. He wanted to please himself with this stuff. You know what I mean?
It almost seems like he's like an animal, just like going completely on instinct.
Yeah. I do agree with that. And it's like, you can't really, like I said, you can't mimic something like that. Like, you can, if you're into fucking dead bodies, you can probably get somebody to act like they're dead, which is also kind of pretty fucked up. But you can't get somebody to like give you their organs and stuff like that. So I do think it was more of sexually than anything else. And I think that like it kind of just, it was too much for him, because he, like he I'm pretty sure he thought that he didn't think that, that sounded so stupid. I'm pretty sure he knew that he couldn't get anything without him hurting somebody or, stuff like that. So I think he wanted to please his own flesh.
Yeah.
By eating flesh.
One thing I forgot to mention earlier about him and his dad. One part of the show that I found unintentionally comedic was during the middle of the show. They take time to sort of show how his dad was disappointed in his son in terms of like his life choices, because so Jeffrey Dahmer becomes an alcoholic like when he's a senior in high school, essentially. But his dad encourages him to go to college. He flunks out of college. And so he has to go pick him up and say, "Oh, you're going to the army." He goes to the army, gets kicked out. It's like, "You're going to go live with your grandma." And then he goes to his grandma and is like, he goes to his grandma, gets arrested for pedophilia. And then he's like, "You're moving out. You got to find your own apartment." And then finally it's like, oh, God damn. It's like it always escalated worse and worse.
Yeah, because
it was almost like a sitcom.
Yeah, because in college it wasn't that bad. But then when he went to the military, he was like, he would prey on these men and like, stuff like that. So then, when he moved in with his grandmother, he ended up killing 3 people, which was crazy. But, all this happened like, after he already killed his first victim. So it's kind of crazy how like, they didn't care about their kid so much that they let it get out of hand, and they didn't control it when they could. And, what's it called? And then when he got his own apartment, I think it really like gave him his own space to really be the monster that he truly was. Like he didn't have to hide it from his grandmother anymore. He didn't have to hide it from the people, like his commanding officers in the military. He didn't have to hide it from his dad. Exactly. Like he didn't have to hide it from anyone. Well, I guess his landlord and like his neighbors, but like nobody really like went into his space. and really like found out what he was doing till he ended up getting caught, which to me is crazy because everything that he like there, like I said, sloppy killer, you can tell, like, you know, stuff like that. But these cops were so drawn away from this because they just didn't want to fuck with it.
Yeah, they didn't want to. They didn't want to help minority victims, nor did they want to deal with any like gay people.
But also, they probably like, oh my god, it's too much paperwork.
Yeah,
my girl, be for
real. So one thing also that I liked about the final episode is sort of like how like the character Glenda Campbell, how she just can't seem to like escape Jeffrey Dahmer. And there's a scene like near the end where like where they're gonna tear down the apartment building because the city of city of Milwaukee bought it from the owners, and they were going to demolish it. And almost in sort of like a horror movie type scene, she looks at the window where Jeffrey Dahmer used to live, and she sees like sort of like kind of like a vision or like a ghost of him in the window staring down at her. And that to me was like a very effective and creepy sort of like little horror moment that I enjoyed, because it just like basically like, you know, sums it all up that, you know, Jeffrey Dahmer is like, he did something to this town, to this community that you just can't wipe away.
Yeah. I also really like that scene, which I kind of forgot about it till you just brought it up. But I think it was interesting how they showed how Glenda was also like a victim, even if she wasn't harmed by him physically.
Yeah.
She was harmed by him emotionally and mentally. And like when you think about like oh, Glenda was just exaggerating, probably like people probably think stuff like that about her. But I think that if you were to be in her position, you would probably be haunted, terrified. Yeah. You were living in an apartment with a fucking serial killer, and she didn't get killed just because she was a woman. And it's crazy because if she was a man, probably she would have ended up the same way how his victims did.
No, yeah.
But
she dodged the bullet there.
Yeah, talking about his neighbors, there's actually a scene where they kind of like implied that Jeffrey Dahmer killed one of his neighbors. Because one of his neighbors was found dead in his own apartment though.
Yeah.
So which was like kind of weird to me because it wasn't ever connected back to Jeffrey Dahmer or whatever, because he was killed in a different way. Like he was stabbed. And then, but he was found in his own apartment, and he wasn't like, I'm pretty sure he wasn't like eaten or anything, but it's supposedly fake and they got it wrong that he was like one of Jeffrey's victims. And that's one thing about this show that I didn't really enjoy, that they did get a few things wrong. And I think that that's why I give it an 8. Because the inaccuracy, but also that they got a lot of things right, and the fun little facts that they put in, like the Jeffrey Dahmer getting baptized and John Wayne Gacy dying and the solar eclipse.
Like that's devil shit right there.
Yeah, that's like brujeria, like times a million.
Yeah,
like it's funny how like everything was connected, you know. But yeah. Anyways,
I like the fact that Jeffrey Dahmer, he liked to wear yellow contacts, because his 2 favorite movies were The Exorcist 3 and Star Wars Episode 6: Return of the Jedi, and he was such a fan of the Emperor from Star Wars, and in the movie The Emperor he has yellow eyes. So I guess he wanted to mimic one of his favorite movie characters.
Yeah, but like he himself said that it made him feel powerful and stuff like that.
He's like a fucking cosplayer who takes his cosplay way too seriously.
Yeah, I wonder if he would ever go to like an anime. I wonder if he would be into anime. He seems like the type.
Yeah, he's that kind of dork.
He's that kind of dude who's like who loves Disney villains.
Oh, shit.
Like he only goes to Disneyland to go take pictures with Jafar.
Do you think that in anime conventions now, are people going to go cosplaying as Jeffrey Dahmer? Will people be that bold?
I've seen a few, and we're actually filming this a week before Halloween, so I'm pretty sure a lot of people are gonna dress up as Jeffrey Dahmer. But you know what's pretty sick? I was talking to one of my friends, and she told me that she seen a picture of a little boy who was dressed up as Jeffrey Dahmer. But that's not the most disturbing part of it all. The way they did it, his parents, they put like limbs, like a foot and an arm or whatever, something like that. It was like basically body parts, but they were like African American body parts, which I think was disgusting.
That is
sick.
Fucking no.
That's something you just shouldn't do. Like we were saying earlier, don't make fun of the victims, and don't bring the victims into this stuff. Dress up as Jeffrey Dahmer if you want to. Don't put like body parts on yourself, because that's something that a lot of people are like insensitive to, I think. But yeah.
Okay. So let's just wrap up what our thoughts on the show. Once again, I really enjoyed the show. I like the way that it was presented. One thing that I forgot to mention was like this show takes place mostly like in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So the show does a really good job of like, choosing like the right kind of costumes, putting in the right kind of props, the right kind of cars. And so it makes you believe that you're in this time period. And so they never did anything where they put some piece of technology or something that made you think, oh, that's not supposed to be there. It never took you out of the show. They did a really good job with that. The set design, the color, the lighting, and the editing made a lot of the scenes very creepy and effective. Evan Peters, he carries the show. He does a really good job. I hope he gets nominated for many awards, and I hope his career goes very well, because this show has now made me a fan of Evan Peters. Still, the show isn't perfect. There's things that I don't like about the show, such as the pacing. I did feel that the show drags on in a few episodes, and it also seems that sometimes the show can be a little bit repetitive, and sometimes they could have said or done certain things in one scene instead of 2 or 3. But overall, I think it was a well-acted show, a well-directed show, and I'm still going to give it a 7 out of 10. It was a good show. I liked it. Any final thoughts on Dahmer?
So I give it an 8 out of 10 because I like the actors. I like the way their characters were portrayed. Like I said before, I didn't like how some things were inaccurate. I do think that they did drag on a little bit too, like some scenes a little too long, that it was like, okay, can we get this over with? And I feel like they could have put in more interesting things with the time that they used up for those like little scenes that were like a little bit too long. I do like how it wasn't as graphic as I thought it would be, because like I said, I used to want gore, but it's not a
you sicko.
Yeah. It's not like a scary movie like Michael Myers, like, or
like Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, like it's not something like that. And I think it was educational. I think it was it got right to the point.
Yeah.
I love that. And it really did show how much of a monster he truly was, how people really idolized him and supported his like sick things. I didn't like the dad. Yeah. And I don't care. I wish they would have like talked about his brother a little more, because he does have a brother, but his brother like changed his last name. He doesn't want anything to do with him. And I do think that that's what the father should have done.
Yeah.
But I think it's pretty interesting.
I don't know. The show does make it seem like the dad did want to protect his son even after like everything came out.
Yeah. And I guess it's something cool, but we also didn't really talk about the mom much, but I like how they did show how she was like very in distress all the time. And I did think that her actor was also like a good, like she did a good job showing how sick his mom actually was. I think, yeah, overall 8 out of 10. I did enjoy it, and I don't have like much else to say about it.
Better than My Friend Dahmer?
Way better than My Friend Dahmer. Even if they did leave out a few interesting things like the meat sandwiches.
Oh shit.
Yeah, but oh wait, actually no, they didn't leave it out, but his
but they don't confirm it like on the show.
Yeah. A few of his neighbors actually did consume that which they think was human meat. But yeah, I think overall pretty cool show. I would watch it again, and it's something that I would recommend to people to watch. So if you haven't watched it, which I don't know why you're watching this if you haven't watched it, because there's a bunch of spoilers, please do watch it.
Okay, so before we wrap up, I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping. So if you guys watched Dahmer series on Netflix, please tell us what you think of it or think about this episode in the comments below. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And also we are on Spotify and iTunes. So if you guys listen to us through those apps, please give us a review so that more people can find our show. We're also on Twitter at Anime Match Pod, TikTok on Anime Match Cut Podcast, Anime Match Cut Podcast on YouTube. And for you, Jasmine, do you have anything that you want to plug or promote?
So my let me start over. So my social medias, my Instagram is at A Christian Mom's Worst Nightmare. And my TikTok is Pickled Fetus with 2 S's. I think my usernames are pretty perfect for this episode. Kind of dark, kind of fucked up. But yeah, if you would like to follow me. And if you enjoyed my presence, if you liked me here, let Jack know so I can come back and do another episode about something that I'm very passionate about, like Elvis.
Casey. All right, let's cut it there.